Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Savannah. If you are new here, I absolutely love books. I love reading on my Kindle. I love audiobooks. It's officially 2024 and so I thought it would be so fun to go through and do like a little 2023 reading recap and just talk about all the books that I've read in 2023, what I rated them and what I thought of them and everything, because this is the time of year where we are resetting our reading goals. I've read some really great books. I've also read some books like weren't as great, so this is a perfect opportunity if you are looking to stock up your TBR or you just love books as much as me and love to just hear about them. Let's chat. I track all of my reading through Goodreads, so that's what I'll be having pulled up on the side to just go through all of the books that I read. If you want to follow me on Goodreads, I will have that linked below. The other thing is I will mention how I read the book because I think that makes a difference, and that way you can know like if you should listen to the audio or not. So in 2023, I had a reading goal of 25, which is the biggest that my reading goal had ever been, and I actually ended up surpassing that and I read 36 books. So the first book that I read is Love Light Farms. This is a Christmas book. It's like at a Christmas tree farm and it's, you know, like the really good Christmassy vibes. This one I read with my book club and I read this one on my Kindle. I ended up rating it 4 stars. This is a book that I started in December, obviously because of a Christmas read. Ended up finishing it in January. I thought it was cute. It did have the good vibes. It had like an interesting storyline. It was pretty good. I didn't feel as connected to the characters as I would have liked, I don't think, like as far as like the romance is concerned. So I did end up rating it 4 stars, but I do think that if you're looking for like a festive read next year, that this one is worth reading. I haven't read the sequel yet, and that's definitely something that I would like to do. Maybe 2024, maybe we'll get there. The second book that I read is Atomic Habits. This book I had been reading on and off for, oh my gosh, forever I feel like. I rated this one 5 stars. I feel like this book is such a good read. Like habits are what really shape our lives, and this tells you like how to create them, how to build them, how to break them. It's a very good book. So this book I partially read on a hardback, and then the way that I actually finished it was with the audiobook. So if you're having a hard time getting through the book, I would listen to it. I mean, it is a very good book. It's just, this is one of the ones I was starting to read when I was still in my era of like, everything you read has to be productive. And I've very much since moved out of that, and that's what's helped me to get back into reading so much. So this one I listened to both ways. Definitely think it's really good. What I have learned for myself with like self-help books and everything is that I think it's best to read less of them and then actually implement the steps, because looking at this like a year later, I am very interested in habits and everything, but what was actually specifically in that book, I don't remember as much. There are a few key takeaways that I really like though. So definitely if you're looking to like 2024, you want to like reset, you need some good habits and you need to like break some old habits, I would definitely pick up this book. It is just like a tried and true, you know, I'm sure you know that. It's like a really good one. The next book that we read is Better Than the Movies. I also read this one with my book club. This is by Lynn Painter. I rated this one 5 stars. I love this one. This is like, you know, it's kind of like a younger romance, and I feel like sometimes that can feel really like not as relatable. I'm 27, I am married and stuff, so sometimes these kind of romances can just maybe feel a little bit cheesy or just kind of like, you know, far away. But I thought this one was so cute. Like this one I listened to the entire way. It was one of those ones where it was like the giddy, like kicking your feet kind of thing. Like it was just so cute. They talked a lot about like different rom-coms and stuff, and it just like made me happy. It was a book that like as I was going through like cleaning my house or going for a walk or anything, like it just made me so happy. And this to this day is the only book that I've read by Lynn Painter, so I definitely have other ones on my TBR and I need to pick them up because yeah, this book just like gave me all like the good like happy little vibes. The next book that I read in 2023 is Magnolia Parks, and this one is like so the opposite of the last one that I said as far as like kind of content. I feel like Magnolia Parks, first of all, the covers, like the old covers are so gorgeous. There's 4 of them in the series, I believe. I really like this. I've heard that it's kind of like Gossip Girly. I've never really read Gossip Girl or anything or like watched it, but this book is good. It's like, you know, like a lot of the people in it are like really wealthy and stuff, so to me that's really interesting to like read about, and I think that the books are well done. They can take a little bit to get into just because there's so many characters at first. It's like, for me at least, it like took me a while to like realize who everyone is, but I rated this one 4 stars. My only thing about it is the romance in it is like notoriously very toxic, and so for me, I don't love that as much. Like when I was reading it, it kind of just like made me uncomfortable because it was so toxic. For me, I like wasn't rooting for them as much, so I definitely think it's a good read, but like not my favorite. I prefer like the happy, good vibes. I guess I take the Lynn Painter thing back because the next one that I read is Better Than the Prom, and this is actually like a sequel. Like it's it's not really a sequel, but it's a follow-up to Better Than the Movies. This is a very short book. I think it's like 30 pages or something like that, but Goodreads counts it as a full book. It is basically the end of the book from the guy's perspective, and I did not know what to rate this one. I rated it 4 stars because I love the original book so much. However, as a standalone, it would definitely be much lower, only because it's pretty unnecessary. It's like exactly what happens in the other book, just from the guy's perspective, but it just doesn't add a whole lot. So I rated it 4 stars. I definitely think if you read Better Than the Movies, like you don't have to read this one, but because I loved it so much, I like wanted to check it out. The next book that I read is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I know she gets a bad rep now, but she is one of the authors that I started reading like when I got back to my reading journey, kind of like a lot of us. This book is interesting. One thing I am trying really hard not to do, I don't go back and change my ratings. This is a book that I would go back and change my rating. I rated it 5 stars. The book is kind of like a friends with benefits situation, and I don't love that as much. Like I like to have like a connection. Like I like where like the people actually really like each other. And so this to me, I was kind of like, eh. Also, a lot of it is like so sad and like depressing and stuff, like a lot of Colleen Hoover's books are. So I really didn't like the book a lot of the way through, like a ton. Though the reason I rated it 5 stars is because I was really impressed at how at the end certain things came together and it made me like the book a lot more. And so because I was so impressed by that, I did rate it 5 stars. But what I'm learning is as you evolve and as you read more books, obviously you have more to compare things to. So like, for example, now I'm like into Fourth Wing, Iron Flame and stuff. And like when I read books like that, I can obviously see that this isn't a 5-star book, but I'm really trying not to go back and re-rate things because at some point in my life, like at the time I read this, I thought it was 5 stars. And so I think it deserves to be 5 stars. The next book I read is The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 5 stars. I thought it was a really good read. I thought it was interesting. I liked the romance in it. Yeah, it was just kind of different. Like there was a female bodyguard with like a male, he was famous, like a male pop star. It kept me on my toes a little bit. I didn't really expect what happened at points. And so I did really like that one. I forgot that I haven't been mentioning, but all of the ones that I've talked about since Atomic Habits, I read on my Kindle. And I thought about that because the next book that I read is Happy People Are Annoying. This is Josh Peck's memoir. I like to listen to a memoir because I like to hear, like if the author narrates it, I like to hear their voice because usually I'm reading it for them to hear their story. And so I think it's interesting to hear their story in their voice. So this one I listened to. I rated this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. This is the guy from Drake and Josh, if you're not familiar. This was just kind of like growing up. I watched the show. I wasn't like overly obsessed, but I definitely watched it. And I just find it so intriguing to hear like how people became famous, like child stars, especially before the internet. I love to hear how they got famous, what their life is like behind the scenes. Like I feel like growing up, like you have this idea of what their lives are like in your head, and then you read about it and it's like so different. And so I always just like get a lot out of them. And so yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. Like this one I would recommend, like if you like him, and I think it's interesting to hear about people's lives like that. The next book that I read is A Man Called Otto. This one came highly recommended to me by a friend. It's like her favorite book. For me, it's funny. This book took me a whole month to read and I like really pushed myself to finish it, which was a long time for me. I exclusively read this book and I rated it 3 stars. I did not love this book. I found it very dry. The main character that is like a grumpy old man kind of like doesn't like a lot about life. And so he's just very grumpy and there's just like really not a lot to it. And like the things he's into are like very boring and it's kind of written in a very boring manner. This is just like my opinion, obviously. I didn't love it. I really had to push myself to get through it. I did think the storyline itself was like kind of nice. I don't know. I'm here for the vibes a lot of the time and like I just wasn't getting the vibes from this book. That being said, I did like it enough that I did have my husband watch the movie with me, like the Tom Hanks movie. I thought they were actually very different. There is like a Swedish movie. I didn't see that one, but yeah, 3 stars. I personally wouldn't recommend it. Like it wouldn't be like one of my top books to recommend, but I'm like glad I read it, you know? After that, I read Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is the Knock 'Em Out series. This one is pretty popular. A lot of people read this book. This book is a little bit bigger. I think it's like 400 or 500 pages. I rated this one 4 stars. I liked this book. I thought it was a little bit different than some of the other books I've been reading. It's a romance. The characters are older. They're like in their 40s, I think, so older than like some of the other characters in the books that I've been reading at the time. And I liked this book. A lot of people loved this book. Honestly, I think a 4 is a little strong for for this book. My thing about it is I felt like for them being like 40 years old, a lot of it was pretty juvenile, like kind of like the way that they acted. This is more of like a grumpy sunshine kind of book, like the guy's really grumpy. I know a lot of people like that. To me, I don't so much. I think it's kind of annoying because even after they fell in love, he was still grumpy, and I'm like, you know, what's the point? But it was interesting. Some of the stuff that happens at the end, again, was like not expected. There are more books, and I do think that I will read them and kind of see. The other books that follow after it are just like different characters. So like the main character, like the guy main character, his brother, it's like him and like someone else in the book, like their love story and stuff. So yeah, they just kind of like keep going like that. So it's not like a direct sequel like some are. A tea break. Cheers. All right, next I moved on to more of a personal development kind of book. I read We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. This one, oh, what did I do? This one I think I listened to exclusively. I rated this one 3 stars. I listened to this. I know I would have gotten a lot more out of it if I would have actually like implemented the steps and done what she told me to do. So that's on me. I did take notes and I did like the book. Like I definitely got things out of it, which is why I rated it 3 stars. I thought it was good. I did think that there was a lot of like unnecessary information, maybe not to some people or like to others or like to her or anything, but for me at least, like there was a lot in there that I didn't find like directly proportionate to like We Should All Be Millionaires. It was kind of like maybe like some political or like some personal beliefs and stuff. Like it wasn't like a direct roadmap for how to get to $1 million for me at least. Like there's just kind of a lot of other stuff in there that I didn't feel like needed to be in there, but it was good and I did take some things away from it. So not upset that I read it, but just like not my favorite book ever. Then I read November 9th by Colleen Hoover, and I remember this book just kind of like blowing my mind at the time. I rated it 5 stars. The premise of this book is this couple meets every year on November 9th, but like not otherwise, like no communication, no phone numbers, no text at all, but they meet on November 9th. The stuff that happens, like the storyline of what happens, it really kept me on my toes. It really kept me engaged. This is one of those ones where I like called my husband in and I was like literally telling him like the entire story, and he actually was like very interested. He was like asking questions, like telling me to like keep going and stuff. He didn't end up hearing the end, which I think was interesting. I would have wanted to know, but yeah, it was like pretty captivating, I thought, honestly. So I did rate this one 5 stars. Then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is a series as well, and this is one I read for book club. And I remember when this book got chosen, I was like thinking, I'm not gonna like this book. Like it's about fairy tales, like this is gonna be stupid. No, this book has started so much for me. Oh my gosh. So it's by Stephanie Garber, but the narrator of this book, I listened to this book. The narrator of this book is Rebecca Soler. I remember starting to listen to this book and I was like, this narrator sounds familiar. It's because she was the one who narrated Better Than the Movies. And I found out that I'm in love with her. Like this is when I started falling in love with audiobooks, is Rebecca Soler. I'm very captivated by her and how she tells stories. And so this book, I rated it 4 stars because there is a lot of like magic and like fairy tales and stuff, like the land and like the fantasy of it. There was a lot of it that like wasn't absolutely my favorite ever, but I did find the story quite captivating. I found the characters captivating. I really liked the character Jax. It made me want to keep going. And so I did keep going, but we'll get back to that because after this, I read Remarkably Bright Creatures. This one I started reading as a hardcover, my friend's book, and then I ended up switching kind of back and forth between this and the audio. And I rated this one 5 stars from the very beginning of the book. Like the first 2 pages, I like felt for this octopus. I was not expecting to feel for this octopus. This is also a book club book. This sounds so silly, but it's like you kind of fall in love with this character right from the start. Not even like a ton happens in the book. It's kind of just like a feel good. Like I think it's well written. I think it makes you think about some things, especially like being younger. I think you think about some things that you wouldn't otherwise. There's a little bit of a twist in it that I thought was interesting. I really enjoyed it. I think this is like a good, heartfelt, feel-good book. So if you're looking for one of those in 2024, I would add this one to your list. Okay, now we move on to the sequel to Once Upon a Broken Heart. It is The Ballad of Never After. This one I rated 5 stars. This one is my favorite. Like I really, really, really enjoyed this book. I thought there was a lot of action. I thought it was very well written. I really, really enjoyed it. Again, it was read by Rebecca Soler, so I listened to it and I was so surprised at how much I love this book. So I would definitely recommend, if you haven't read the series, read it. That's the second one. I then listened to She's Up to No Good by Sarah Goodman Confino. This is one of the books that I picked for our book club. I liked this storyline. It was a neat story. It was like this girl and her grandma. Like it was like a love story, and like you're finding out about like this grandma's life through the story. It honestly is very interesting. The grandma is kind of like witty and sassy and like a little bit hard to deal with. She's funny. Like she's a good character, and a lot of things that happen in it are very interesting. I rated it 4 stars. Again, it wasn't my favorite story ever. I didn't like absolutely love it, but I definitely thought it was worth listening to. It's like a really good thing, like as you're just, you know, driving in the car and stuff, like it definitely kept me entertained. So I would would recommend that one as well. This next book, I can't, oh, this is my most shocking book of the year. And this might shock you when you find out what it is. Paris the Memoir. Paris Hilton's memoir was gut-wrenching. Okay, I read Jeanette McCurdy's memoir. That was gut-wrenching. Okay, that was hard. But for me, this one did something to me. Okay, I was not expecting this book. I feel like this may have something to do with my age. I feel like Paris was a little bit before my time. I also just wasn't super connected to this stuff to know really what was going on or know a lot about her when I was that young. But I rated it 5 stars because I could not stop thinking about this book for 3 weeks. Could not sleep, was kept up at night, could not stop talking about it to my friends, my husband, my family. It was so disturbing. And it's it's her real life. It's different when it's a fiction story. This is her real life. The things that she went through, I feel like a lot of people think of her as I don't know, I feel like she doesn't get a lot of credit for a lot of things, even though she is very successful, but on her own and everything. But yeah, some of the stuff she went through was just unbelievable. I really wasn't expecting it, and I still think about it, and I just didn't even know this kind of stuff existed. Maybe people know about this, I don't know. I just totally didn't. If you want a book that is a bit shocking for a memoir, read this one. I listened to it so I could hear it in her voice, and I feel like that really added to it as well. So if you're choosing between listening and reading, I definitely would listen. I'm definitely more interested in her now, knowing what she's gone through in her life and everything. You also hear some of the more stuff that I was expecting, the unrealistic, I was cooking in my kitchen with Kim Kardashian, and you're of course, okay. I would really recommend that one. The next one that I read is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is one of these hockey romances, and I'm sorry guys, I don't think I'm here for it. I've only read one, so I don't know, maybe I need to give them another chance. But this one I rated 3 stars. This is a book talk recommendation. I read this one because I had just heard about it everywhere, and everyone's it's so good, it's so good, it's so good. It is spicy. For me, I just felt I didn't resonate with it. I like when you resonate with a book. For me, it was college students. There were ice skaters and there were hockey teams. I was never really in that sport world. There's some immaturity. There's a lot of partying and stuff. I just didn't connect with it. I feel the characters get together before they really like each other. I don't like that as much. The book was well written, which is why I rated it 3 stars. I just didn't love it. I kind of was okay, when is this going to be over? This one I read on my Kindle and I also listened to. So yeah, either one would be fine if you were going to read this one. I then listened to The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I rated this one 4 stars. I feel this is the same kind of book as Remarkably Bright Creatures, where it's just kind of I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of dull in the way that it's written. That sounds rude. I don't know. It's kind of just a story, you probably don't know. Basically, this girl, she really doesn't like her life, and she ends up killing herself. And then she goes into this library. It's kind of this afterlife library, a second chance, and she gets to relive her life over and over and over again, kind of try all these various realities, things she thought she would want, and try them out and kind of see how she feels and if she's happy. And then as soon as she decides that that's not the life she wants to live, she goes back to the library and then picks a new book, and that life she can try again. And I did enjoy it. I felt the librarian was interesting, the storyline was interesting, the concept of the book in general itself was interesting. I also thought there were some life lessons in it a bit, the grass isn't always greener kind of thing, kind of really be grateful for where you're at now. You may think something could be better, but it may really not be better. So I think it was also insightful from that perspective. I felt it was a decent listen on an audiobook. I thought some of the things she wanted to do were a little bit unrealistic. She came off to me as a boring person, the main character, but she had all these really unique, multifaceted interests that were she could have been this and this and this, a pop star, and this niche geologist kind of thing, and something else, but she didn't really do any of the routes. It was just, I don't know, you'll see if you read it, but I did think it was worth listening to. A bit strange, but also good. Okay. Moving on. The Once Upon a Broken Heart series was only 2 books, and I was deeply distraught when I found out that it was over after this. Well, actually, I knew a 3rd book was coming, but I had to wait for that one. And so I was oh, after these 3 books, it's over, and I was really sad till I found out that there's a prequel. So I went back and I read those. Now, you don't have to read them in that order. Obviously I didn't, and it was fine, but this is the Caraval series. I rated the Caraval #1, the Caraval. I rated it 4 stars. I was so happy to have another book narrated by Rebecca Soler. The characters in it, like the main characters, are not characters that were in the other books, but Jax is in it. So the character that I said I really like, Jax, is in it. This one is like, it's a game, okay? Caraval is a game, and it's kind of like made to be this like really magical, wonderful thing, but then when they actually get to go, it's basically like this game that is real life. So you go and you can't really tell like what's real and what's fake. There's deception and whatever, and like you just really don't know. So for me, I didn't love the mind gaminess about it, but I did like the storyline overall. Like I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was a good read. Okay, next. This year I did my 200-hour yoga teacher training, so I am now a yoga teacher. It ran July through October, and so as part of that curriculum, we had to read 6 books. So 6 of the books that I read this year were because of that. The first one that I read, it was called Help, Thanks, Wow, The 3 Essential Prayers by Anne Lamott. I rated this one 2 stars. I thought it was pretty rambly, and I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I definitely highlighted some things. Like, I'm not gonna say I didn't get anything out of it. Like, I think it was a good book, but as far as like me remembering what happened months later, like I read it in June, like May, June, like it wasn't super memorable and I didn't get a whole lot out of it. Then moving on, I read Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. I'd been wanting to read this one for a while. This was interesting. It was like this 14-year-old girl who comes from this really, really strict household, and she ends up babysitting for this family that is like very not strict, like very kind of just crazy and all over the place. She's 14 and she's watching this like younger girl, and she kind of ends up just like taking control of things, and like she gets to live out this whole different life that like her parents don't allow her to live, and it's kind of secret because her parents don't really know. Like she's babysitting for a doctor, so her parents think she's in this like prestige job, but like really she's not. Like really their life is so chaotic, and I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 4 stars. There were a couple parts that I was like, okay, that's a little bit weird, but like otherwise, I don't know why I thought it was so neat. It just kind of like made me feel good, like how this girl like went in and like was more understood, and like the things she did. Like I found it very kind of inspiring that she was like 14 and she just kind of like went in there and was like, okay, like I'm taking charge, like this is what needs done, I'm gonna do it, and like didn't really ask for permission. Like I kind of found that like empowering a little bit. I thought it was like a cute, like neat little read, and I half read this one and half listened to, and I thought it was good both ways. I then back to back read the next 2 books in the Caraval series. It's Legendary and then Finale. I rated Legendary 4 stars and Caraval 5 stars. I don't exactly remember what happened in each, like they all kind of blend together, but yeah, the Finale one I thought was really good. Obviously I rated it 5 stars. Rebecca Soler narrated all of them. Like I listened to all of these books, and I would definitely recommend this and the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. Ooh, next I read Done and Dusted. It's the Rebel Blue Ranch series, so the new one is coming out soon, I believe. This one has such a beautiful cover, okay? We have to appreciate cover art sometimes, don't we? This one is by Lila Sage. I rated it 4 stars. This one, especially in the beginning, I really enjoyed the banter. I thought the banter between the characters was really cute and really just like funny, like good. And I like the storyline and I like the romance and everything. I rated it 4 stars because you know when like something big happens at the end, like a proposal or like a marriage or like a baby or whatever, and you don't feel like super connected to the characters, you're just like, okay, like cool, whatever. Versus like you really love the characters and you're like really like pining for these people to be together, then you're like so excited, or like I don't know, you're just like so happy. Yeah, I just like didn't get that as much at the end. It was a good read, and I will be reading the next one. Oh, okay. The next one is Fourth Wing, and I'm sure you've probably heard a bunch about Fourth Wing, but this is the Empyrean series. It's the first one of a 5-book series. There are only 2 out right now. I read this one in August and September, and I rated it 5 stars. I think about this book all the time. Like I recommend it to everybody. This is like, what's that, like Roman Empire? Like this is my Roman Empire book. Like I love it so much. The characters are Violet and Xaden. I love Xaden. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so basically it's this fantasy. It takes place at Basgiath War College. It's like really intense, and the girl that goes in, like she was preparing to be a scribe her whole life, but her mom puts her in to be like this dragon rider, and so it's this extremely intense program. It's just like very brutal there, and every day her mantra is just like, I'm not gonna die today, and like she just like, oh, I don't know, it's like so hard to describe because so much happens, but like, oh, they bond dragons. It's really good. Okay, I probably sound crazy if you like haven't read this book, but like trust me on this, it's very good and I love it so much. I'm currently reading Iron Flame. This will be my first book of 2024, which is a sequel, and oh my gosh, I love these books so much. If you haven't read them, like please do. Then I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is my second book by her. I had read People That We Meet on Vacation. a couple years ago, and I rated this one 4 stars. I liked this book. I thought it was interesting. I actually think I listened to this one the whole way through, so I didn't read this one at all. It is a good book. Like for me, like it wasn't like the best book that I ever read, but I definitely enjoyed it. And yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one anymore, but like 4-star read, like would recommend. Good beach read. Okay. The next 2 books that I read, I'll talk about for my yoga certification. The first one is Healing Mantras Using Sound Affirmations for Personal Power, Creativity, and Healing. This one I listen to exclusively because like mantras that are not like in our, like the language that we normally speak every day. So it's definitely good to listen to so you can kind of hear it. So basically it's like mantras and like you say the mantra every day, like so many times, and then like a certain thing is supposed to happen. For me, a lot of the stuff that I was introduced to in my yoga training was like a new concept for me. So this one was like kind of like far out there. I don't think I rated that one. Just because something like doesn't necessarily feel right for me doesn't mean like it's not a good practice. It was just something that like I, you know, took in. Like we did mantras in my yoga teacher training and I actually really loved that part of it. But the book for me, it kind of just like, it felt weird. Like it was just kind of, I don't know, it was like something I was like, you know, grateful to be exposed to. The next book that I read is Wheels of Life, A User's Guide to the Chakra System. This one I rated 3 stars. This one's by Anodea Judith. And this one I read and listened to. A lot of what I did is I would like walk on the treadmill and I would listen to it and read at the same time, because a lot of it, like for me, this was like my first experience being introduced to the chakra system. So it was very new for me. And yeah, there was just like a lot of like to learn from this book for me. So I would do like a lot of highlighting, and that just like kind of like helped me to like stay focused and really present on what I was reading. I took a ton out of this book. Like there's a lot of it that I did highlight and that I learned and everything like that. There's a lot of it also that I like don't really feel like I fully believe in and things. So yeah, 3 stars for me. There was definitely a lot of research and a lot into it. Kind of like a good introduction to everything. The next book that I read is The Measure. This is by Nikki Ehrlich. I rated this one 2 stars. So this is like the most harsh I was on a book throughout this process. I read and listened to this one. This one had a really, really interesting storyline. And this is why I wanted to read it. Well, it had an interesting concept. The concept of the book is that one day, every single person in the entire world that is over the age of 24, I believe, or 22, wakes up and has a box on their front porch and it has a string, just like a normal string. The length of the string determines the length of your life. It's a fiction book, obviously, but it is very realistic. Let me just read you this. I really debated what to rate this book. I think the concept is highly intriguing, and honestly, I think the book was well done, but it was entirely too realistic for my taste. This book gave me major pandemic vibes with all the politics, news, religion, and everyone's differing stances and views. It also closely aligned to what would happen in real life in a situation like this. In my opinion, that it stressed me out. And yeah, so like there's a little bit more to it, but basically that's exactly it in a nutshell. I think if the concept had been executed in a different way, I would have really liked it, but because it felt so realistic, like, you know, them finding out like, oh, this group found out that like the strings are real, and then like there's people that believe it and people that don't and people that freak out. It brought in politics, it brought in religion, like it just brought in so much, and it was everyone's different. It just like felt like all this extra unnecessary stress. Like talked about like the news and the Pope and the this and the that, and like it was just too much for my fragile little soul. Good book, but like not personally for me. The next book I read is Light on Life by BKS Iyengar. This is one of the books that I read from a yoga teacher training. Again, I took a ton out of this book. BKS Iyengar has really been like foundational, instrumental in like the yoga community. Again, things that I took from it, you know, things that I'll take, things that I'll leave, kind of just like a yoga class or life in general. But it was definitely like a good book for my yoga training, and I learned a lot from it. So 3 stars. It was also interesting because a lot of these books aren't books that I would have read on my own. So good knowledge. The next book is Essential Ayurveda, What It Is and What It Can Do For You. I rated this book 5 stars. I have over the last several years been trying to move into like more of a low tox lifestyle with like my beauty products, like products that we use in our home, with food, just everything. I've been really trying to like be more low tox and just like mindful of things like that. And I've also been really interested in like naturopathic, natural kind of just like ways of like healing our bodies and things like that. And so this book is like that. Like it's very like naturopathic. It's just like a natural, holistic way of living. This was such a great introduction. I just really resonated with this. I felt like so much of it would be so beneficial to live your life in this way. There's these dosha types, which are like kind of like compositions of people. Again, I'm like not doing a good job of explaining this, but it was like, okay, so mine, it's like I really resonated with one of these, and it's like so weird because it's like you should eat these foods, and like all these foods are like foods that make me feel good, and it's like you shouldn't eat these foods, and those are all like the foods that make me feel like crap. And it was just like really mind-blowing. This is what I wrote about it. I put, this is such a beautiful book and I look forward to using it as a resource for years to come. I think going back in it and like applying like even like one piece of it would be like so life-changing. So yeah, I was really, really grateful to have read this book. Then I read The Woman in Me, which is Britney Spears' memoir. This book I did a mix of listening to and reading on my Kindle. I would have listened to the whole thing if Britney would have narrated the whole thing, but she only narrated like a very little piece at the beginning and then she had someone else take over, and the narrator of the book was really good, honestly. Like did a very, very good job in my opinion. I just kind of like did both. I like to do that. Sometimes I kind of switch on and off, but I rated this one 5 stars. I do typically rate memoirs higher because people were like telling their story. I'll read to you what I wrote about this. I just put like, growing up I loved Britney Spears and I still do, but as it turns out I didn't know all that much about her or her life. I love memoirs and I found it particularly fascinating to hear about how famous people became famous, particularly those who were discovered prior to social media. I love getting to know Britney in this book. You can tell she's a genuinely good person and has such a big heart. I thought this book was well written and intriguing, but it's just so terrible what she went through. I found myself wanting to give her a big hug throughout. She deserves all the freedom and happiness that she now gets to experience. So just hearing about her conservatorship and like what actually went on behind the scenes was like, again, really mind-blowing, really crazy. We're almost done. There are 3 more books. The next one is Wreck the Halls. This was like my December Christmassy read. This is my first Tessa Bailey book. I wasn't expecting to really like it. Like I know her books are really spicy, but I just kind of thought that there wouldn't be much to them or, you know, whatever. I listened to this book and I loved it. Like I rated it 5 stars. This is another one where I was kind of like giddy, kicking my feet. Like I really resonated with the characters right off the bat. Like I thought that the storyline was really good and really interesting. It kept me intrigued and yeah, I really liked it. I honestly would possibly listen to this book again, which I don't feel like is like super common for me to like want to do. Then I read It Will All Work Out, The Freedom of Letting Go by Kevin Hart. This is one of Kevin Hart's like little books. This is on Kindle Unlimited. It was like 43, 48 pages, very small, but Goodreads does count it as a book. It's about like control and letting go and stuff. He kind of equates like control to like monsters, like the control monster. That part of it I didn't resonate with so much, but I do think like at the end of the book, the second half, there are some really good like practical things in there, kind of like for like the perfectionist. I don't know, kind of for everybody, I guess. But I did find myself highlighting and like I did take some things away. It's funny because I did read it, but like I was reading in Kevin Hart's voice, you know? So it is kind of interesting in that respect. It's a little bit rambly, but like I feel like he's a little bit rambly and that's like kind of part of his charm. So I rated that one 4 stars. I definitely don't think it's like a, you need to read this book or this book's gonna change your life, but I do think there's some like good tidbits in there. Finally, I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I had heard this book like kind of talked about a lot, basically just that it's about like video game designers, but like you didn't actually have to like or care about video games to like the book. And I saw a couple of the people that I like follow on Goodreads, like a couple of people that I know in real life rating this book 5 stars. And so I was like I want to see what this book is about. I rated it 2 stars. I didn't love it. It's, again, for me, a lot of it's like about the vibes, like it's how it makes, like how a book makes you feel. And like this book did not, like certain things happen in it and like it didn't make me feel good at all. And like, yeah, I really didn't feel good throughout it. I read it before bed and like a lot of times I would like dream poorly because of the book. There were some good parts about it, but like I didn't love the characters. I kind of felt like I didn't really know them, even that they are very talked about, like kind of like hard to reach in my opinion. Yeah, just some things happen that's like, I don't know. It's not a bad book. It just wasn't a book for me. As far as the video game piece, you definitely don't need to love video games, but there is a lot of video game talk. So yeah, it just like was not my favorite book ever. So yeah, that is my 2023 year in books. I hope you enjoyed this video. I read 36 books, 12,028 pages. Goodreads tells you all this. My average book length in 2023 was 334 pages. My most shelved book that I read was The Midnight Library. Least shelved was my Essential Ayurveda book. My average rating was 4.1 stars, and that's because I try to only read books that I actually think I'm gonna like, so I do typically rate higher. I absolutely love reading on my Kindle. I love listening to audiobooks, so I've made some other really great videos like tips for using your Kindle, kind of like a why you should own a Kindle video. So if you are wondering if you should get a Kindle, that is a really good resource. I will have these like all linked below. I tell you how to get books to your Kindle in airplane mode, like using the USB like straight from your computer to your Kindle, which is a really good one. So if you like books, subscribe, stick around. We'll have more of this coming in 2024. I have a lot of exciting videos planned in 2024 with lifestyle, travel, reviews, all that jazz. So I hope you'll stick around. I love you all so much and I will see you in the next one. I can't wait to achieve all of our goals together and have a great year. I will see you guys later.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel with Love Nelson. I'm Nelson and I have no idea what this video is going to be about.